Cowboy Bebop. It's an anime pretty much everyone has heard of by this point, and for good reason. It's not just one of the best anime series ever produced, but one of the best TV shows in general. It takes place in a bleak future and follows an odd assortment of bounty hunters who, because of various circumstances, all end up working together on the same spaceship named Bebop. Each episode was like its own short movie paying homage to a different genre of film. You had the blaxploitation episode, the alien episode, the gritty Hong Kong crime drama episode, and so on. But the best thing about it all was that all of these different styles and tones were wrapped together to create something cohesive and unique. The cast are all deeply flawed individuals who you quickly come to love as the show progresses. It's no wonder then that after the show ended, people wanted more. They wanted to see more adventures from Spike, Jet, Faye, Ed, and Ayn. And that's exactly what we got in the form of manga, a feature-length animated movie, and what we'll be exploring in the next couple videos, video games. Yeah, there were games. 2 of them. Neither made it outside of Japan, sadly. That's pretty odd considering the massive impact it had in the West, thanks mainly to the constant reruns on the Cartoon Network Adult Swim block, a foreign concept to us Brits. We never got any cool anime on television, and that includes Cowboy Bebop. But none of us, not even the States, got to experience the games. I have some good news though to take the sting off of that fact. They're not very good. Hello everyone, Snickety here, and I'm once again joined by Sachiko, the librarian of my obscure, esoteric game collection. And yes, I did steal my theme song from this title screen.
Oh, fiddlesticks!
The first one we'll be taking a look at is Cowboy Bebop for the original PlayStation, released in May 1998, during the show's initial airing in Japan. Before we dive into the game itself, let's appreciate this cover art for a moment. It has the cast huddled around Ed, watching her play this very game. The back of the box even shows it from the opposite angle. Talk about meta. Anyway, the game is an on-rails space shooter where you play as Spike, piloting the Swordfish II and fighting a bunch of generic enemies. Yeah, you don't get to control the characters directly, which is pretty disappointing. This is like if they made a Ghost in the Shell game where you can only play as the Fuchikoma. Oh wait, there's an unusual issue I encountered with this game. For whatever reason, the voices never sync up with the character portraits on screen. To say it's out of sync would be an understatement. It's more like the voices are always before or after where they should be, leading to humorous moments where Faye appears to be speaking with Jet's voice. I was originally playing this on a chipped PlayStation 2. Afterwards I tried it on a chipped PlayStation 1 and got the exact same thing. If I had to guess, I'd say it's because it's an NTSC-GA PlayStation game running on a PAL system, so the speed is slightly off. Normally that wouldn't matter with PlayStation games, but this game is designed in a weird way. I was tinkering around with the sound files on PC and found that the voices are mixed into the music. If the music is slightly off, so are the voices. This is something you should consider before importing. At any rate, it runs properly on PC emulation, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. The Swordfish II controls decently for the most part. You have your default machine guns, which you can fire indefinitely, and the ruby laser, a weapon you may recognise from the show. It's that big bulky plasma cannon Spike uses every now and then. The ruby laser has a longer range and damage output, but you can't use it constantly. There's a cooldown time, so make sure you don't miss. You can also equip homing missiles and something called the energy bolt from the upgrade screen. The controls for these secondary weapons are weird though. You have to hold down square to lock on and then X to fire. You press both with your thumbs, so it just feels awkward. They couldn't have mapped this to L1 or R1 or something? Better yet, let's just cut out the middleman and get rid of this 2-button crap. What L1 and R1 are actually used for is to rotate your ship. It's cool, but otherwise useless. However, if you double tap the buttons, you can, and I think you know where I'm going with this, you can do a aileron roll. That is the correct term for that aerobatic maneuver. And yeah, it does give you some invincible frames, so it is pretty useful. Make no mistake, Cowboy Bebop for PS1 is not a good game. The first big giveaway is the camera. It never feels like it's in the right place. The ship is rarely in the centre of the screen. It's always drifting off to the bottom corners, sometimes off screen altogether. This game is a good example of how to do on-rails gameplay like this wrong. There's a fixed path that's always advancing forward, but it doesn't feel natural at all. You'll be doing one thing, like trying to shoot an enemy for instance, and then the game decides that your attention is better spent over here. It's not intuitive, and it draws attention to itself in a way that better games of this type do not. This is especially noticeable during the second stage. This stage makes me nervous. You're flying between these buildings, and it's sometimes unclear which direction you're meant to go next. I find myself being forced into buildings by these abrupt, sharp turns. What's going on? What is going on? Holy shit. It feels like you're being pulled by a rubber band. There is one specific part that is so confusing, I can't believe it made it into the final game. It looks like you can fly through the buildings here, but nope, you die. You can follow those arrows on your reticule, but you still end up dead. Just look at this madness. After trying this more times than I care to admit, I figured out that you have to follow Jet above the buildings. But even then I crashed because of how confusing the whole thing is. It really makes you distrust the game design, and that's never a good thing. The entire game is like this, but it's most obvious during this second stage. The game also has areas where you have free movement in any direction, similar to the all-range mode in Star Fox 64. These sections are reserved for the end stage bosses, such as the first one here. Because of how small the area is, you don't get much room to maneuver. Your chance at getting a good shot at the boss will be over before you know it. And then you have to turn around. But in order to do so, you have to get enough distance by flying in the opposite direction, leaving you open to fire. Rinse and repeat. This stuff is never fun. I was never really a fan of it in Star Fox either, but at least there you could speed up, slow down, and perform an Immelman turn. I'm all about the correct aerobatic terminology in this video, trust me. Here you've got no choice but to hope you don't get shot. Also, there's a couple irritations that make these sections unnecessarily difficult. The transition from on-rails to all-range is dreadful. It flips you upside down out of nowhere. What? Why? This game has a nasty habit of confusing you just as you reach the boss area. The second boss is deadly for this, as it can hit you when it first rises and take off half your health. This game does not have checkpoints, by the way, so if you die, you go right back to the start of the stage. Or scene, as it's called in-game. The other irritation during these boss sections has to do with your aileron roll.
Do it back!
Sachi! Don't you dare say it! The camera rolls with you here when it doesn't ordinarily. Why? It's so jarring and it makes it much more difficult to use. Why did you change the rules, game? After that awful second stage, the game goes a little easier on you. This stage has awesome music and is much more fun.
I order you to launch Gundam! Get out there!
It's some sort of European seaside town. It still has weird, confusing moments every now and then, but it's less obvious. The fourth stage has you in space fighting an armada of battleships. I really like the look and feel of this stage for one reason. Look at the stars. There's a kind of effect where they blur as you move the ship, and it looks really cool. Otherwise, this stage is overly cluttered and is visually a mess. There's just so much stuff going on from this point forward. It gets really hard to look at. It's kind of psychedelic. Maybe this entire game is just another bad mushroom trip.
This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
Obnoxious little frog.
The sixth and final stage is extremely difficult.
I'll go it alone from here.
You fly down into this tight corridor and the game throws everything it has at you. You'll probably survive, but only with a sliver of health left, which is all you'll have to fight the end stage boss. It's a giant electric snake thing. Words fail me. It has all of the problems I mentioned with the first boss, but to the extreme. It's difficult even getting a clear shot on this thing because of how thin it is. You better beat that corridor with most of your health, or you are not beating this. This is where I got stuck playing on normal difficulty. I think I may have chosen the wrong weapon loadout. Between levels, you're given a certain amount of points to spend on upgrading your ship. As I mentioned previously, you can purchase homing missiles and the energy bolt, but you can only equip one at a time, not including the ruby laser. I tried them both out and was unimpressed. The homing missiles are slow and awkward to use. The energy bolt is okay, but it's for close range only, so you might as well just use your machine guns. The loadout I recommend is the fully upgraded machine guns and ruby laser. Don't even waste your time with the hardpoint weapons. There's 3 levels to each weapon, but you don't need to purchase them in order. You can go straight from level 1 to level 3, and I recommend doing this as you'll be spending less points, but it also means you'll be weaker during some missions. You'll need to have fully upgraded weapons for that final stage though, so try to save your points. I tried it again on easy and this boss is still a nightmare. After you beat it, the screen will ominously fade to black and you'll be faced with the final boss. A corridor of hell. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be looking at here. Is this the game's bad guy? This electric glowworm? Is it an alien? Some sort of machine? I confuddled. What's going on here? I mean, story-wise, what's this game's deal? Truth be told, I'm not 100% sure. There's no translation available for the cutscenes, so I had to do my own using the manual. Take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, because there's probably going to be some erroneous details in there, I'm sure. Because of an astral gate accident, and no, not the same one that blew up part of the moon, the Bebop crew end up in another dimension. Wait, what? Well, now we're bringing alternate dimensions into the Bebop lore. Next you'll be introducing aliens as... Oh my god, they actually did it. No, that is not Ein wearing a headset. That is some sort of Chewbacca alien, named Walken.
This guy is unfucking believable.
He is a member of the Resistance fighting the evil Imperial forces. Those are the enemies that are attacking you throughout the game. Other original characters include Rodan, no, not the Toho monster, a character that makes contact with the Bebop when they first arrive in this universe, Maria, a woman you save from the Imperials, and finally Debit, the leader of the Resistance. Debit. What is it with Resistance leaders in Japanese games having stupid names?
I'm Maxwell Cougar.
So basically the plot is the Bebop rescues the Resistance members and helps them take down the evil empire. Bandai, if you wanted to make a Star Wars game, you should have just made a Star Wars game. Why'd you have to drag the good name of Cowboy Bebop into this? It's so out of character for the series too. Could you ever see the characters from the show single-handedly taking on the entire army? Spike almost died fighting 3 fighter jets in the movie, but here we're meant to believe he can topple an empire. And strangely, this game doesn't really have a villain. Unless you count that snake thing I showed earlier. Was this all his doing? I'm asking a genuine question, Sachiko. I really don't know.
Yes.
As bizarre as this game is, it did have quite a lot of staff from the show working on it. Shinichiro Watanabe, the show's creator, is credited as the scenario advisor. But that probably only means they showed him this nonsense when he was drunk at karaoke one night. The original character designs to this game were done by Toshihiro Kawamoto, the same character designer for the show. You can tell with all the new characters but Walken and Rodan, who don't look like they belong to the Bebop universe at all. Hiroshi Takeuchi provided the game's cover art. He worked as a key animator and animation director on the show. Strangely, there seems to be a myth with this game that Yoko Kanno, the composer for the anime's iconic music, also composed this game's soundtrack. As far as I can tell, this is false. The game's credits list Shinsuke Sugiyuchi as the composer and has no mention of Kanno. The Wikipedia page correctly credits Sugiyuchi, but then contradicts itself in the same article by saying Kanno composed the music. Many websites and videos have parroted this myth, including myself, earlier this year. And apparently it was composed by Yoko Kanno. I am not 100% sure on that. I remember reading that it was composed by Yoko Kanno.
That is incorrect, boss!
That video sucks, by the way. Don't watch it. But yeah, anyone saying Kanno composed this game's soundtrack likely didn't do research beyond the Wikipedia page. I'm looking at you, Did You Know Gaming. Maybe you should also invest in an underpaid game librarian. I guess it's because we all want to believe Yoko Kanno composed a cheesy arcade-style soundtrack. However, it simply makes no sense next to Kanno's other work. And let's not forget that it sounds nothing like the music from the show. At all. It's not even the same genre of music. Bebop, which I think should be obvious considering it's in the title. I don't dislike the soundtrack to this game though. Once you get over how not Cowboy Bebop sounding it is, you realise something. It's awesome. It may not fit the show, but it definitely fits this game. It's kooky arcade fun, and it really elevates an otherwise forgettable game. The PS1 game isn't good, but there's far worse games you could be playing. While doing this review, this game grew on me a little. It really has a certain charm to it. Even if the gameplay is far below something like Star Fox, this game even does the same thing as those games where your teammates show up on screen to tell you stuff, and you can even piss them off by shooting at them. It's a little disappointing you can't play as Faye and Jet. There's 3 ships aboard the Bebop, but we only get to control the Swordfish II? Lame. It's only 6 stages long as well, so a single playthrough will take you about an hour or so. It may be lacking in content, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, like the other Bebop game. Yes, we have another Cowboy Bebop game to take a look at in this video. Is it more faithful to the show? Well, we'll find out very shortly, after a brief word from our sponsors. Now, if you excuse me, I have to take a leak.
Snickety's gone! Do a barrel roll!
Do a barrel roll!
Sonic Team 最新作近未来レスキューアクションバーニングレンジャー
Hello everyone, Snickety here. Do you have crippling loneliness? Well, we have just the thing for you. We have a Discord server. You can go there and talk nonsense with your fellow SnicketySlicers, SnicketySlicees, SnicketySlicettes. Fellow SnicketySlice viewers, you can talk to me, the Senzu, and even Gerald Undone, whose server I am currently crashing like a broke relative. Do you like traps? Well, there's a channel specifically for traps, so you have no excuse, so come on down and give us a big hello.
The hell is this?
You have to go complete.
Right, I'm on it.
Cowboy Bebop next.
This one was released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2 and is titled Cowboy Bebop, Tsuioku no Serenade, which translates to Serenade of Reminiscence. Much like the PS1 game, it never saw a Western release. But it almost did. Bandai did plan to release the game in North America, and according to the English voice director, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, parts were dubbed into English with the same voice actors from the show. I asked her to confirm this myself on Twitter, and apparently only the intro scene at the aquarium was recorded. Alas, the US release of the game was delayed multiple times until it was dropped altogether, so no English dub. It does have the original Japanese cast, for what it's worth, as did the PS1 game, but there's no English subtitles. Fortunately, there are videos on YouTube that have provided fan translations. All the subtitles you'll be seeing on screen are sourced from those videos. I wasn't able to play the game with subtitles myself, obviously, but it was nice to watch them after the fact. The game opens with a recreation of the classic tank intro. The music here is much more like the show, but there's also a huge downside to this. It is the music from the show. So the soundtrack just feels lazy, as if they just threw together the most memorable tracks from the anime and called it a day. Yoko Kanno did return to compose some original tracks though. For real this time. But it's only 3 tracks. Don't get me wrong, they're good tracks. It's just a shame they couldn't get her to compose an entire OST. Say what you will about the music from the PS1 game, but at least it wasn't all recycled from the show. Before we dive into the lengthy original story this game has, let's talk about how it plays, since this is the only part you can't experience by watching the cutscenes on YouTube. It's divided into multiple sections and attempts to capture every aspect of the show, as opposed to just the dogfight scenes. There's fighting sections where you stop and go up against multiple foes, very reminiscent of a Chopsaki or Bruce Lee flick. There are also shooting sections where you'll be able to take cover and dive around in slow motion like you're in a John Woo movie. There's some other stuff as well, but the shooting and fighting sections are the game's main focus. It's kind of silly that neither your player character or the enemies take out their guns during these fighting sections, but whatever. I'm willing to put this down to Chopsaki rules. You'll be able to punch and kick enemies and string together combos, something you're able to do quite fluidly when surrounded by enemies. It's clear they wanted a combat system that looks and feels cool, and they succeeded to some degree. But there's something about the punch and kick combo that brings it down. It feels sluggish. More importantly, it feels weak. The enemies have such huge bars of health that battles can drag on for a long time, and your attacks don't seem to do much damage. You can also grab enemies with the circle button, which is mostly useless except in very specific circumstances. The most important mechanic during these fighting sections is the tension meter, the yellow bar below your health. Holding R1 drains your tension meter, but while you have that button down, enemies won't be able to hit you. You'll automatically dodge incoming attacks. This is useful for when you want to focus on defense. It kind of reminds me of the stamina bar from the Souls games, as you'll frequently be backing off from the fight to allow it to recover. There's also an evasive roll that uses a big chunk of your tension meter. Unfortunately, like all things mapped to the thumbsticks, you'll often press it when you didn't mean to. But while holding down R1 will keep you safe, pressing it at the right time will execute a counter. Counters are really awesome, and you'll feel like a badass every time you hit one. You have to tap the button just as someone is taking a swing at you. It takes a bit of practice. These counters aren't just for show, however. They're actually your most effective offense. A successful counter will kill most enemies instantly, and anyone who happens to be around. So what we have here is regular attacks that do little damage, and a counter that does way too much damage. Do you know what this means, Sachi?
You must become shapeless, like water.
Say what?
Water can drip and it can crash. This game teaches you to employ your mind and be like water. If you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Be water, my friend.
No, Sachi. It means the only attack worth using are the counters. Actually, you might also be right. I have no idea what you said. I realise that your regular attacks are only really useful for finishing off an enemy when they're low on health. It's still a safer way of dealing damage, as you can still very easily screw up a counter. But later on in the game, if you aren't dishing out counters left and right, you'll die. A lot. Sachi, play me some sweet 80s montage music while I master the counter.
Oh, I'll get the mixtape.
Nobody told you that you'd face the truth alone, but you got the power to begin. Let yourself wander, let your spirit find the way, reach for the power from within. You got no reason to let people keep you down. Stand up and fight for what you are. 'Cause your biggest challenge is the one that lies within yourself. Know what you're fighting for. Hold on to the vision in your eyes. Keep the fire burning bright, got to make them realize only with power can you rise. Hold on to that vision in your eyes.
The tape is messed up.
That isn't helping, Spike. It's not?
Once you become a black belted master of the counter in Cowboy Bebop, there becomes no reason to use any other attack. But this also totally ruins the gameplay, boiling every encounter down to a one-hit kill. It looks awesome, it feels awesome, but it's just boring. Stuff based on quick reactions are, of course, good. They reward skilled gameplay. But when they become the only gameplay, that's just a stupid combat system. It'd be like if every Street Fighter match had to be won with a Daigo parry. Those were the rules, or else the match just goes on forever. Now to be fair, I have seen other gameplay where players have made effective use of the combos, but I was never able to do this myself. And why should I, when the counters are way better? Getting good at the counters is way easier than getting good at the combos too, so I'm not going to throw the game a bone here. There are other attacks you can use, such as the cool and hot special moves. There's 2 bars below your health. The blue one is your cool meter, and the red one is your hot meter. You can build the cool meter by doing well at the game, and you build the hot meter by completely and utterly sucking. Needless to say, I more often built up the latter. The cool special attack has a wide range and is quite useful. But the hot attack is total trash. It only goes in the one direction, and usually misses anything you try to direct it at. You're probably better off not even using it. Unfortunately, using counters builds an even bar, and as we've already established, counters are kind of my thing in this game. That's everything worth mentioning about the combat really. There's a super special you get when one of your bars fills all the way, but I never managed to do that. Oh, and sometimes Spike gets to use a broom like he did in the movie. Let's move on to the shooting sections. You can hide behind cover and wait for your opportunity to shoot back. For some strange reason, all of your bullets explode on impact and have some serious stopping power. Getting shot will knock you down for a couple seconds. Realistic perhaps, but it doesn't really work well in the video game. Anyway, you can also press circle to do a slow motion dive and shoot multiple enemies at the same time. It's kind of cool. These sections aren't too bad, but they are hindered by some bad design choices. You're unable to turn your character too far to the left and right, as if Spike is some sort of gun turret with limited rotation. You're also not allowed to reload and move at the same time. These weird restrictions really make these parts feel stiff and lifeless. For the most part, there's segregation between the fighting and shooting sections, but every now and then you can switch between them. It's odd. Why would your character not use a gun if they could? This can be seen during one of the game's boss fights. You have to shoot the signs to make her fall down and then attack her when she's dazed on the ground. You can only hurt her with melee attacks for some dumb reason. The transition between the two gameplay styles isn't smooth at all, so it's easy to see why they kept them separate. You've probably noticed by now that you're not restricted to playing as just Spike Spiegel. There's also Faye Valentine and Jet Black. Spike is the good all-rounder, Jet deals a lot of damage but is slow, and Faye does the least amount of damage but is the quickest. Not that any of these differences matter, since all of their counters are insta-kills, and I'm gonna stop hammering on about that now. Now that we've covered the majority of the gameplay, let's take a look at the game as a whole, from beginning to end. Be aware that I'll be spoiling the entire story in this next segment. That is to say the story of the game, not the anime. I figured most people watching this video probably won't be able to play it anyway, so I'll try to condense the entire experience down so you're not missing out.
This is like the last episode of Cowboy Bebop!
It certainly is. The game starts with a gang chasing after a bounty at an aquarium. It goes about as well as you'd expect. Spike does one of those anime punches where the background goes all abstract with speed lines. Something the actual anime never did, but I digress. After a lengthy tutorial section, we get to the game's first puzzle. A door with a password. There's quite a few of these scattered throughout the game, and the only way to solve them is by looking around for clues. You find these suspicious spots that you can take a closer look at. These parts aren't very good because of how little detail they give you. Just keep hammering on the X button until you find something.
Watson, get in here! I've discovered a clue!
After the introduction mission, Spike comes across an old song, named Diamonds by Priscilla. The significance of which doesn't become clear until later on. We arrive aboard the Bebop, and this game's adherence to the source material becomes clear. It has the same reoccurring gag of the crew being in perpetual poverty, and the banter between the characters is on point. Similar to the show, there's an episodic nature to the narrative with an overarching plot. This episodic format is contained to the first third of the game or so. It's just the Bebop crew going after eccentric bounty heads. There's nothing too noteworthy here besides some wacky villains. For the sake of brevity, I'll be sticking to the main plot. Later on, the gang hears about the rumour of Captain H's treasure. Captain H was a space pirate who robbed from the rich and gave to the poor half a century ago. Apparently he was so popular he had his own anime. I'm gonna nitpick this for a second, because this bothered me. I know we have cartoons about Robin Hood, but that's more folklore, and is certainly older than 50 years. In the context of this game, this is like if they made a cartoon out of DB Cooper. Yeah, the kids will love that. Actually, they probably would. Maybe I'm thinking too much about what is an obvious Captain Harlock reference. But anyway, Faye gets excited about finding Captain H's pirate treasure, and tries to get the others to go looking for it. Later, Spike catches up with a bounty head named Steve, a music producer who is also after Captain H's treasure. For some reason, he assumes Spike is also a music producer, and tells him about said treasure, which he believes to be an unpublished song by the singer Priscilla. And then this game's original characters are introduced. A pair of young bounty hunters who try to kill Spike when they mistake him for a bounty head. What is with all the odd assumptions in this story? Despite the attempted murder with a giant machine gun, Jet is very apologetic about the whole misunderstanding, for some reason. This part of the game is pretty damn awesome. You have to kick these mines back at Ken while using the crates to avoid getting shot by Bianca from above. It's really creatively designed and fun, something a lot of this game is lacking, sadly. Speaking of which, now we get to the ship sections, and these are just a chore to get through. The ship is on rails and you have minimal control over it. You can move the ship slightly to avoid crashing into things. There's also a boost which you'll need since these sections are on a time limit. The time can get so strict later on that you'll need to hold down the boost button through the entire course. You get shot at by enemies and you can fire back, but be very wary of your ammo. You only get about 5 or 6 shots, so make them count. If you run out, well, your only option is to dodge bullets, in addition to the environmental hazards. These sections boil down to simple memorization at the end of the day. Fortunately, they're few and far between, so they're not too bad. If I had to compare this to the gameplay from the PS1 game, I'd probably go with the PS1 game. That had unlimited ammo and you had a third-person view of your ship, not to mention actual control. There's a scene with Jet and a woman named Ellen at a bar. They talk about a man named Ronald, a cop Jet used to work with before he was killed in the line of duty by terrorists. Keep this guy Ronald in mind because he later turns up as the game's villain. Nothing says antagonist more than a man named Ronald. Next we have a stage with Spike and Bianca being pursued by goons on a train. This part in particular annoyed me as it has a shooting section with no cover whatsoever. The shooting in this game doesn't work at all unless you have some cover. And as I said in my Bullet Witch review, cover-based shooting always sucks. And this was made before cover-based shooters became at the very least functional. But getting back into things, we've reached what is possibly the hardest part in the entire game. That's quite impressive considering this game is made up of various overly difficult sections. Spike jumps onto the roof of this train and you have to get to the other side, all while avoiding the stuff coming at you at high speed. It sounds simple enough, but everything is a one-hit kill and your reaction time has to be like greased lightning. I must have died about 50 times trying this. And every time you do, you have to sit through the same long, boring cutscene. I almost rage quit the game during this part. I'm still surprised I didn't. I honestly would have if I didn't already promise this video. Just look at this madness.
Wipe yourself off, man. You dead.
There is no margin for error. You have to jump between the carriages too, which leaves you vulnerable for a second. You have 3 hazards to worry about here. The left, the right and the above. You can duck below the one that comes from above, but with the left and the right, your only option is to run to the other side. Make sure you don't run too far in either direction though. If you do, you won't have enough time to run to the other side. There's also enemies, but it's best just to ignore those.
I'm the guy with the plan, because I'm smart. Yeah? Well, I'm taller.
Something you might have noticed is that Spike sometimes blocks your view of what's ahead. This killed me quite a few times as well. What demented Japanese programmer came up with this? You can see me finally doing it here. Anyway, let us forget about this fresh hell and move on with the game. Kent starts getting chased by goons because they think he knows where Captain H's treasure is. And for good reason. Captain H was Kent and Bianca's grandfather. Faye tries to keep him out of harm's way since she's also looking for the treasure. But the two end up getting imprisoned by none other than Ronald, the dead man himself. Jet then confronts Ellen and asks if it's really possible that Ronald died all those years ago. Turns out his ship was just lost in hyperspace. Dead, lost in hyperspace, what's the difference? And then Jet fights some goons chasing after Steve. Can you imagine getting punched by Jet? The dude's got arms like tree trunks. Ah, quick time events. This game has a lot of those, some of which are downright evil, as we'll see later on. This one just amuses me though. A ceiling fan very slowly falling on Jet. Okay, we're out of the bar and... oh god damn it! Anyway, Faye and Kent escape from prison using the oldest trick in the book, and we get to a stage that is quite annoying thanks to Kent. Kent can fight on his own, but his AI is just hopeless. Not only do you have to keep yourself from dying, but that little twerp too. This game seems to be aware of how annoying this is, as health kits appear much more often, and the AI wastes no time stealing it. That also has the downside of you yourself never having a chance to heal. Oh god damn it, Kent, you son of a bitch!
Please go easy on him, Snickety. Falling is unavoidable sometimes.
You can actually punch Kent yourself, but it doesn't decrease his life bar, which is good since he's constantly in the way. Okay, so I've made it clear that I'm not really a fan of this stage, but you haven't even seen the worst it has to offer. There's stealth sections. Bad ones. You have to tiptoe along the floor or else the enemies will hear you and it's game over. I don't know about you, but I absolutely hate this in video games. You're so used to holding the joystick all the way down, holding it only halfway is really hard. If your thumb has so much as a twitch, Faye will run and it's game over. This is one of those things that should not be challenging in a game. Trying to avoid getting shot in a gun battle, that's meant to be challenging, because it would be in real life. You can make a mistake and end up with a bullet in your chest. That is a very real danger. Getting spotted by guards in a stealth game is also a real danger. But do you know what isn't? Walking slowly. I don't know about you, but that's not something I struggle with. I do it every night when I need to take a piss at 2 AM. But this has been a long rant to point out something so simple as walking should not be hard. Anyway, the next part of this section has you sneaking up to enemies and taking them out of a well-placed judo chop. If you're spotted, it's game over. Despite the fact that we fought through larger waves of enemies previously. A good way to describe this would be tedious. God damn it, Kent, you've died again. The next room confused me. You have to solve a puzzle by pushing these crates. I thought there was some way of pushing them to create a pathway to the door, but all you have to do was destroy them with a kick. Some of these crates can be destroyed, others can't. Why? Who knows. But the next part is one of the many chase sequences this game has. These are pretty fun, but it can be confusing where you're meant to go at times. Notice a pattern with this game. Everything is obfuscated. So it turns out Faye and Kent are located on the island where Captain H's treasure is supposedly buried. Hence all the tight security. In the next scene we find out that the singer Priscilla is actually Bianca's grandmother, meaning she and Captain H were a couple at one point. Spike then acts as a distraction for Bianca to escape, and we get this cool sniper sequence. This stage is pretty standard really. Towards the end you have to kick these grenades at the guy throwing them, which is kind of difficult. You really have to get lucky with that kick. It doesn't help that you're constantly being attacked by enemies either. The checkpoint placements really leave something to be desired in this game. Sometimes you'll have to replay a lot of the same rooms again if you die. Sometimes you don't. It's very inconsistent. Here, if you die, you have to go through this pointless room again. Why not start me where the danger is? Are you trying to waste my time? At one point you have to defend Bianca from above in an FPS section. It's ridiculously easy. There's only one other part like this in the entire game, and it's also far too easy. Which is very out of character for this game. Spike faces off against Ronald for the first time, and it's revealed that explosives have been placed on the Bebop. Cut to Jet and we control a hovercraft, in a pretty tedious filler sequence. It's not bad, it's just kind of boring. But you want to know what the worst thing about it is? Right at the end there's a quick time event. Now I wasn't expecting this on my first try, so I just set the pad down. Only to be greeted by a game over screen! And then you have to do the entire thing again. It's like one big troll. Anyway, Jet lands on the Bebop and you have to locate all the bombs. The interesting thing about this part is that you get to explore a 3D recreation of the Bebop. It's exciting actually being able to look around this location that you only ever saw parts of. It reminded me of that feeling of exploring the Simpsons house in that hit and run game when I was a kid. You have to be really careful though, because I got lost on this stage for over an hour looking for all the bombs. Faye gets in contact with the Bebop and tells him about the island with Captain H's treasure. Spike naturally makes his way there, while the Bebop is being attacked by ships. I have no idea what Jet does to fend off these ships single-handedly. Because it's never shown, nor is it ever mentioned again. So I guess it was a drive-by? This narrative has a lot of faith in Jet. I can't really blame it. Dude is hard as nails. Spike arrives at the island and starts laying waste to the soldiers stationed there. It's kind of stupid how many of them there actually are, but whatever. There are certain areas where the only way to advance is to defeat the purple enemy on your radar. They're usually throwing grenades. If you don't beat them, enemies will keep spawning indefinitely. How are you meant to know this? I can only assume the game tells you at some point. But what in-universe reason could there be for this? Are the purple dots radioing for reinforcements or something? We may never know or care. Spike finds Steve at Priscilla's grave before he's shot and killed by an airship.
Steve!
No, not Steve!
The pilot is after the bounty on Spike's head, which is the reason you get attacked so much in this game, by the way. Can you put a bounty on someone's head if they haven't broken the law? Can I suddenly say, hey, there's a 3 million Wulong bounty on Sachi's head? I mean, I suppose it's not a legal contract, but that just makes this dude a hitman, not a bounty hunter. At any rate, Steve's final wish is to listen to Priscilla's unreleased song at least once. Luckily, Spike had already gotten the song from Bianca's holographic picture frame earlier, so he lets him listen. The gang reunites and they run into a familiar face. Ellen, Ronald's lover from the bar. She tells them that Ronald and his men were unable to find the treasure on the island. It wouldn't be in the spirit of Cowboy Bebop if they got rich now, would it? We once again come face to face with Ronald and his full plan is revealed. He spread the rumour about the treasure to lure bounty heads to the island, where he plans to blow the place up and get rid of them once and for all. His rationale? To make the place safer for cops. He also hates bounty hunters, which is why he plans to kill them too. This is an extraordinarily stupid plan. Did Ronald actually expect every bounty head in Solar System to chase after a treasure that may or may not exist, and all be on the island when the explosives go off? I like this scene here because you get to see Bianca and Faye butt heads. Anyway, after some gameplay with Spike, we finally reach Ronald for the final battle. Oh wait, he escapes. And the game is still going for some reason. After a long pursuit, Spike lands on Ronald's ship where the real climax begins. The theme song plays for this entire level, which is pretty cool until you realise it's only 90 seconds long and on a loop. It's at this point where the combat would become much harder if I wasn't well trained in the one-hit kill counter. But you get to a stupidly hard part where you have no cover and you have to take out these guys with shields. You have a split-second window where they're not behind their shields and not shooting at you. This is a good place to make use of the first rule of combat.
Shoot them before they shoot you.
Now we get to an absolutely evil part of the game. You have to carefully traverse this field of lasers, all while fighting wave after wave of goons.
Goons!
Oh?
Hired goons!
It's pretty tough, and it'll take you a good while. But there's nothing better than that sweet taste of They did it again! They put a QuickTime event at the end of a long sequence. You have no way of knowing it's there, so you will fail this at least once, and go all the way back to the beginning. The first time this happened, I let out a cry of despair. We've all been there at one point. And then it happened the second time because I pressed the wrong button. Or maybe I was too slow, who knows. So at this point, I said fuck it. I handed the controller over to Sachiko, who did the rest of the game for me. Well, Sachiko, did you have fun?
Well,
Don't answer that. No, of course you didn't. Next we get to a boss fight with this robot dude with nunchuck arms. You're unable to hit him directly at all. What you have to do is wait for him to leave himself open and then grab him. That's right, this is one of the few times you have to use a circle grab. Now you have to smash him into this electric machinery. There's a big problem with this boss. Spike misses his grab half the time, leaving you open to an ass whooping. But anyway, Sachi eventually persevered. Good going, Sachi.
Thanks!
And got us to the final boss, Ronald, who is pure insanity. We get a speech about dream and reality, and how Ronald must wake up from his dream. It's all very similar to the final confrontation with Vincent from the movie. This is not a boss you should take lightly. You have two means of dealing damage here. You can wait for him to miss a kick and combo him from behind, or you can counter him. Good luck doing the latter with any kind of consistency, by the way. I couldn't even get close, and by the end of this game, I was countering like the best of them. The thing that sucks about this boss is that you'll be constantly draining the tension gauge, waiting for the right moment. Most of the fight is you running away from him, waiting for the thing to recharge.
Stay away! Don't come near! No! Oh, fiddlesticks! I died again!
Sachi managed to beat Ronald at this point. Good job, Sachi.
Thank you!
So I took the controller from her. I was planning on stealing the victory for myself, if I'm honest. But then this happened. The dude has a phase 2. Now he's even harder to hit. If I die here, I'm gonna have to do the first phase again, aren't I? This time I rage quit for real. This game was giving me a migraine, so I just looked up the ending online. Ronald is defeated and Bianca lets Spike keep the song. This turns out to be their only reward from the game's adventure, as the Bebop crew still don't have a Wulong to their names. The end. I want to talk more about the story to this game, as it's the only worthwhile thing about it. The gameplay is not good at all. In fact, it's a chore that gets in the way of a half-decent story. The story presented in this game isn't anything as good as the best episodes of the show, but it's fine. The new characters, Bianca and Ken, are pretty cool. The fact that they're so young makes for good contrast next to the older, more jaded cast we know and love. In fact, they kind of act as a replacement for Ed in that regard, since she isn't in much of this game. She shows up a couple times, but the story gives her nothing to do. My biggest complaint with the narrative has to do with Ronald's dumb plan and motivations. They make zero sense. The writing tries to be as smart as the show and movie, but it just falls flat. It's not a terrible episode of Cowboy Bebop, but it is sure attached to a terrible game. If you're like me and you simply must have more Bebop, I still can't recommend this. Just watch the cutscenes on YouTube. So I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the only 2 video games based on Cowboy Bebop, an anime classic to remember. I've been thinking about which one I prefer, and I'm gonna have to go with the PS1 game. It was short and had some awesome music. The PS2 game is long, frustrating, and repetitive. However, the PS2 game does do a better job at capturing the feel of the show, but I simply found the first game to be more fun, and that's more important for a video game. But I still don't recommend either of them. Play a good game, and not something that's based on a beloved anime. So for now, this is goodbye.
Wait, there's still one left!
Huh? What are you talking about?
I was digging around the library and I found a third one!
You did?
Yeah, a person named Saturn Memories told me about it.
Saturn Memories? Sachi, I don't want you talking to this person ever again. They're clearly a bad influence.
Okay.
There is apparently another Cowboy Bebop game. This one is a homebrew fan game for the Sega Dreamcast. You have to burn it to CD yourself, but it can be played on a real Dreamcast. Sachi, this clearly isn't an official game, so I have no idea why I'm talking about it right now. Curiosity, I guess. Also, bonus content for the re-release of this video. Oh damn, this doesn't look good at all. There's a bunch of stock screenshots here, all of which have the brightness blown out. This is just a mess to look at. I like how it has the copyright information there. Yeah, I'm sure Sunrise signed off on this. It starts with this little recap of the series and how everyone came together. It also has Tank playing in the background. Not the full song, mind you, just a 20-second loop of it. And let's talk about the English translation here. It's horrendous. Spike and Jet are 2 hunts money that gain the life-capturing but the dangerous villains of the future. Little by little, these solitaires and cold men are filling their ship. The Bebop of a very strange one and varied crew. Ein, a super dog intelligent. Faye, an addict young person to the games, and with a mountain of debts. Ed, hacker with an anxious personality. All is crew of the Bebop. This time the mission of the Bebop is to destroy to the clan Dragoon, and to find to love Julia of Spike. Well, it's less silly than the plot to the PS1 game, I guess. Look at this mess of a screen. So yeah, it's a shmup where you control a ship, which is apparently being piloted by Faye Valentine. That is not Faye's ship. That is not anyone's ship in Cowboy Bebop. And why is Faye the pilot? thought we were trying to take out the Syndicate and find Julia. Surely that's more of a Spike mission. There is just too much wrong with this to point out. The hood is ugly, the backgrounds remind me of puke, and the music is beyond annoying.
What you listening to, son?
I don't think you like it.
Well, why not? I like this new generation of music.
Okay, so basically your objective is to keep flying forward and shoot things. The first mission has asteroids falling on you, which are difficult to hit. And every mission has the exact same ship enemy. There's only the one. You only have 10 bullets for some strange reason. But you can collect more with these pickups. I wasn't able to finish a single level. It's just so repetitive, and the shooting feels so bad. It's incredibly difficult even shooting anyone without getting hit yourself. If you die, you get this nonsensical game over screen. I guess Faye is going to shoot me for being shit at the game? And it won't even let you try the level again. You can only restart the Dreamcast. The only reason I was able to see the latest stages was because I used the password screen, and they're all exactly the same. This thing is just awful. I can't believe a fan made this. It's just a reskin of some other game with the Cowboy Bebop name thrown onto it. The worst thing is, I actually paid money for this. It was only the cost of the CDR I burned it onto, but still, this is not the game I'm going to play if I boot up the old Dreamcast. This Saturn Memories fellow must like seeing me suffer. Sachiko, bury this deep in the library, where no one will ever find it.
Will do! Okay.
This is the end of the video for real this time. See you later.
Bye-bye!
Bang.
愛してたと嘆くにはあまりにも時は過ぎ